Greetings, Keith Prather again, here with your August NCM Power Sports Economic Update. Let me go ahead and share my screen and we'll get right to it. So for this month, the leading index came in just a little bit lower month over month and year over year, but I want to point out a couple of things. The August index came in at 84.2, was down just slightly, almost flat against what we saw in July. But if you take a look at it on a historical perspective, it still is historically staying really high. So this being a leading index, it just shows the environment for demand. It shows how strong the economic fundamentals are that are underpinning overall demand for power sports equipment. And right now, what we're seeing again is it's just right at that long-term trend line, which means about where it should be. You know, it's not exceeding expectations, but it's certainly not depressed. It's certainly not declining at a fast rate. And we get that when we also see the retail index. When you take a look at the overall retail sales index, we look at it on a 3-month moving average, it's still pretty strong. As it's about 1.4% higher month over month, down just a little bit year over year, but essentially it's in a great range. And we think for September, looking ahead, and once we finally get all the September data in, it looks like it's going to maybe pop up a little bit more. It's really within the long-term averages and actually well above and exceeding that. So it shows a good underpinning for the broader economy when it, as it relates to power sports sales. So I'm going to do this in every single one of these videos this month for each of the sectors that we cover for NCM. But it's so important and so fundamental to what happens in with the sales environment. So this is again the dot plot measure from the Federal Reserve, and what each one of these blue dots represents is just simply a vote by a Fed member for where they believe interest rates will have to be able to kind of meet the Fed's targets. So prior, when we take a look at this orange box, this is where the Fed's estimates were coming out of their June meeting. So when we got the last dot plot, they were averaging that rates somewhere at the end of the year would be around 5%. There wasn't a single Fed official, even those that are more hawkish in nature, that thought it would be at least 5%. They know it's going lower. Well, and they reduced them by 50 basis points. And so now they're somewhere around 4.75. But the majority feel like there's still going to be at least one more quarter point cut this year, maybe two more quarter point cuts. So that would bring the Fed's rate down somewhere around 4.25%, which would be fantastic if you're a consumer trying to go out and make a purchase, right? It eases the pressure on banks and also reduces just overall pressure on credit. Loosens the market up a little bit, and that will actually pull some consumers back into the marketplace. If by the end of the year we get interest rates that are, maybe a full point lower than they were in June, that really does some interesting things for buyers. And then if you look ahead, as we look at 2025, right now the expectations are that we're going to see it go down to about 3.25%. That's significant. You look at where we were prior, Fed estimates were somewhere around 4%. We could be as low as 3.25, maybe as low as 3% based on a few of those estimates. So that creates a really, really accommodative consumer environment for power sports sales as we kind of look forward, over the next 12 months. So that's a good tailwind for you, at least as we think about the market. The other thing too is as we look at durables like power sports, automotive, marine, all those sectors that we cover with NCM, all of them are highly correlated and driven by income, household level income adjusted for inflation. So we call it disposable personal income. It's just that money that's left over after you pay taxes and after you make all those necessary payments like for house and rent and maybe the necessaries for food and a clothing allowance or something like that. But we have this estimate that comes out, and that estimate was running at about 1%, 1.1% perhaps. I mean, I think I showed that to you in a video last month. But right now, the Federal Reserve has come in and they've made adjustments to the data. So they've got new survey data in, they've been able to get more accurate data. And what they're learning is that it's trending a little bit hotter than they expected. It's running right now somewhere around 3.1%. So much better than expected. It's running hotter than that 1% range. It's better than, maybe what we got in the, since 2010, that average over that decade, we ran about 2.4%. So if we're going to run 3.1 this year, that's a pretty good rate and it's ahead of expectations. Now for the full year, we still haven't increased our estimates much. We do think they're going to come in a little bit better than 1.4%. I think somewhere around 2%, but then for 2025, we've got about 1.4 again. So stays a little bit sluggish over the next 2 years. But as inflation comes down, that pushes this disposable income up. It just means that households have so much more money left over at the end of the month to go out and spend on things like, maybe a loan or longer term loan for, like a piece of power sports equipment. So you do have a lot of those adjustments in there. I will also say that in the report this month, if you go read the written report, take a look at the back page because we started breaking out some sectors in that report that will help you understand the different buyer segments in power sports and maybe what they're feeling and kind of the pressures they're under, or the liberating factors are going to help free up spending from those categories over the next year. And so hopefully some little tidbits in there, but it might give you an idea of maybe from a sales perspective where you should hunt a little bit if you're looking for some opportunities. So from a broader economic perspective, if we think about macroeconomics overall, we just are still not seeing a lot of recession risk in the mix. And I do think that once we get beyond the election, we've got all this Federal Reserve positive momentum. You get the election behind us. We've got the East Coast port strike generally behind us. We've had some hurricane activity, but it looks like maybe we're moving into a better weather environment. That's going to increase sentiment. It's going to improve consumer sentiment. And you're going to have a lot of consumers that are going to go out and realize that their job is stable, their wages are pretty good, inflation's easing, interest rates are coming down. And so that environment looks pretty good for them in 2025. And we think that they'll start spending a little bit more. Okay. So my contact information is available for you. Feel free to reach out anytime if you have questions about this or anything else. And until next month, have a very safe month, and we'll look forward to seeing you.